in one. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cardellichio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, where we're finding function in a dysfunctional world. We're just going to get right into it today, okay, because I think that we're going to be talking a lot. I want to welcome our guest, Sylvia Worsham. Sylvia, how are you today?
I'm doing incredible. I'm in Texas, so the weather is nice and crazy down here, as I'm sure it's crazy in New Jersey as well.
It's going to be towards 70 degrees, 64 degrees today. Friday, we're going to get snow. So as such, the weather is crazy. But I want to welcome everybody to the program today. Sylvia and I just recently met through a mutual friend. We started talking, we hit it off, and I said, listen, Sylvia, please come on to the podcast, because our goal is to motivate, educate, and inspire. Everybody's heard me say that. And she's written a book, soon to be New York Times best-selling author, Journey to Me. So a little bit about Sylvia. She survived a near-death experience, 2012 Easter Sunday, and she used this as a turning point. She was a multiple award-winning Pfizer pharmaceutical salesperson, a mom, single mom, and she used this to become an author, a speaker, turning points coach as she is today. Since surviving, Sylvia lives her passion in helping men and women who find themselves at a crossroads, which we're all at crossroads these days, navigate change and confidence with faith and joy. Sylvia, welcome to the program. You and I were talking before we got on, and geez, I think we started the podcast then. So tell me a little bit about who you are. Tell me about your upbringing. Tell me about your dad. We were talking and we were sharing stories about that. Let's start there.
Well, let's start there, yes, because we had the common theme of I'm full-blooded Mexican. Most people look at me and they're like, really? So 2 Mexico-born parents. I was raised by 2 immigrants. And as such, when you're first-generation American, you grow up believing you have to prove your worth to be in this country, because that's the cultural, theme that comes along with being raised by immigrant parents. And I grew up the oldest of 3, and my dad's a retired surgeon. So, perfectionist. Mm-hmm. I love my dad, and he's a wonderful person. He came from a very abusive background, and was a very good man in that he provided for his children. But subconsciously, he fed us the belief that you needed to achieve to be happy. And that was his definition of success. And so for the first 20 years of my life, I kind of operated from that level of expectation, achieve, to the point of exhaustion. And I thought that when I got there, this high level in my Pfizer pharmaceutical career, #1 sales rep in the country, that I would be happy. And even though I was proud of myself when I got to that level, I realized very quickly that that's not getting there, that joy is found in the journey of life. It's in every moment. And all you have to do is seek, and you will find joy, because it lies within you. And so now I'm at a point in my life after I woke up from the near-death experience that happened, 10 years ago. I was 37 years old.
Yeah, tell us about this near-death experience.
That was just crazy.
Yeah.
Because I've been a single mom for 3 years, right? And I've gone through therapy to get over my first divorce. And I was ready to date again. And so I started dating my second husband. And I made the mistake of taking birth control pills after the age of 35. And I'd safely taken them for 10 years. No issues. And then within a couple of, within days of starting the birth control pills, I started to get a pain in my chest, and I didn't know any different. I was very stressed. I worked a lot for Pfizer. I was working 50 to 60 hour work weeks as a single mom, providing for my little boy. And 2 months later, on Easter weekend, my boyfriend, who's from Louisiana, invited my son and I to go meet his family. And of course, for a single mom, that's a big deal. because you're
Sure
like,
it
oh,
is.
my son to meet his family. That's
Right,
cool.
because you really don't let anybody meet your son that you're dating unless
No.
it's a serious relationship. Sure.
Exactly. So we fly. I make the choice to fly to Houston from South Texas,
Mhm,
and we land in the medical center, which is like a huge miracle in itself, right?
mhm,
And luckily we spent the night. And in the middle of the night, I experienced what I felt was like a heart attack because the pain was excruciating.
mhm,
And it felt like 50 knives were piercing my chest. And I had talked to my brother, who's a doctor, the day before I flew,
mhm.
because I turned very pale and I was having trouble breathing. And he said, based on what you're describing to me, this was all over the phone. He never saw me clinically. Uh, he said, it sounds like pleurisy. And for those that don't know what pleurisy is, it's the inflammation of the lining of the lung, and it kind of mimics pulmonary embolism,
Right.
right? And so that night, I thought it was pleurisy because he told me it's going to be really painful. Just take, these things over the counter for 5 days, I didn't call Donnie
Mhm,
at all. And so the next day I said, I don't think this is pleurisy. So I call my brother and I explain what's going on. And he's like, did you fly to Houston? And I said, yeah, I told you I was flying to Houston. And he goes, I don't care what you're doing right now. You need to get to the ER immediately. You need to get a CT scan of your lung. And you do not leave Houston to Louisiana until you see what's going on.
mhm,
And I had never heard my baby brother talk to me that way.
mhm,
He's always joking and stuff. So he sounded like terrified on the phone. So we rush over to St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital, which is
mhm.
among the best hospitals in Texas. And walk in, they do the CT scan. I get a critical care pulmonologist come into my room and say, a woman in your condition should not be sitting up talking to me right now. You have 2 large pulmonary embolisms in your left lung,
Wow.
which went through your heart, and that's that pain you felt. So the fact that you even survived last night is a miracle. But I thought that was the end of it, and actually that wasn't. I get admitted, and my little boy's outside with my boyfriend,
Mhm.
who he's only met like twice before, So this
And
is,
now he's taking care of him in the hospital because mom isn't doing so well right
yeah.
this moment. Right.
And they're telling me you're not leaving here
Mhm,
until like maybe Tuesday of next week. Right. So I'm thinking, okay, fine. And he goes, oh, and by the way, the scan revealed your liver's inflamed. But why? Why is my liver inflamed? And so he said, well, we can't do the scan again because, your kidneys and the functions and whatever. So we're going to do it tomorrow. But of course, I'm already like, what's in my liver? Because liver is not something you want to mess with. And so the next day they do a scan of the abdomen, and I get 6 doctors in my room. And I'm like, this isn't good news. I know this is not good news. And the guy who saw me the day before in the ER said, well, we have a real problem. And I said, really? Aside from the multiple pulmonary embolisms, he goes, yes, he goes, you have a large blood clot, and it's basically blocking your vena cava, and it's putting pressure in your liver. And if it manages to cut off the blood supply to your liver, you're going to need a transplant. You see the 3 doctors on your right? And I was like, yes, they're the
They're,
transplant.
they're ready to go at a moment's notice. Right.
In case, this actually happened. He goes, so we're running against time. And I didn't know it at the time. My father and all my siblings that are doctors explained it later. I had a 20% chance of surviving, but nobody told me that in the moment. I had Budd-Chiari syndrome, and that's deadly. That's a deadly diagnosis. And so, I get rushed to the ICU. I spend 4 days there. And I mean, I describe all this very, very well in the book because part of me is also warning women, be aware of your choices and be aware of like what you put in your body,
Mhm,
and the stress level that you are carrying around with you, because these 2 things in combination, look at the horrific effects of that in a body like mine. I was in the best shape of my life. That's probably part of the reason why I survived. The other reason is God intervened, because truly time was of the essence, and they were doing therapies that they were not used to doing
mhm,
in a case like mine. They say, we're going to try TPA, and you know
mhm,
what TPA is. But for those that don't know, it's this big clot buster. It's this thing they infuse in you, but
mhm,
it has all these side effects, and they're
mhm,
horrible, And when they tell you you likely can die
Mhm.
So I'm facing pulmonary embolism, liver transplant, liver failure, and possible death or hemorrhagic stroke. It's kind of a grim thing. And in those moments, I surrendered to God because I knew science was going to go only so far.
Mhm.
And then there was God and God Almighty that can do, nothing's impossible for him.
Mhm.
I fully surrendered in that moment. And I had a very powerful encounter with him in the ICU,
Do
waiting.
you mind sharing that encounter, please?
Oh, I think that encounter was like, and if I cry, I apologize.
That's okay. It's a very somber moment right now because at the, in life, you go through stuff, and on the other end, you're resilient, like we said before we got on, and you're here for a reason. I had a heart attack when I was 37 years old, so I didn't know what I was going to do or I was going to make it. So, but these are situations in life, and sharing them and being vulnerable is good, because this is where you motivate and you educate and you inspire people, because you don't know who's listening to this right now. It could be that tomorrow, a year from now, Sylvia, and we've put somebody on the correct path for their life, and that's what this podcast is all about. So thank you for your share. It's all good. So what was that moment? What was that moment?
So it's Sunday morning, it's Easter Sunday morning, and we don't really know if the TPA has worked. And if it has not worked, has not stopped that blood clot, they were going to go interventionally. And that was a huge risk in my case.
Mhm.
So I'm really I'm terrified. I'm a single mom. My boy is 7 years old. And I really don't know what's going to happen. And a woman with the Catholic diocese walks into the room.
Mhm.
And my mom had spent the night with me. So it was her turn to kind of switch off with Donnie, because
Mhm.
Donnie stayed behind with me. And so Donnie's in the room with me and this lady, and she says, "Are you Sylvia?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, I'm with the Catholic diocese. Do you mind if I pray with you?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Well, no, I don't mind. I need the prayers. I don't know what's happening."
Mhm.
So we form a prayer circle and we start reciting the Our Father.
Mhm.
And halfway through, I felt this love envelop the room so powerfully. I mean, going back to that moment in the ICU of just I felt like I was being held like a baby in God's arms. And I remember knowing I was okay. It was immediate knowing. Peace came over me, and I just fell into God's arms and trusted him fully. And that full surrender, I think, is what God requires of us. And then he steps in and saves us, right? And I had done that
Mhm.
the night before. I mean, I had fully surrendered to him, and he came to visit me to let me know he heard me, he heard
Mhm.
my prayers, and he was going to step in
Mhm.
and give me my miracle. So he leaves the room. The lady leaves the room, and my boyfriend, who now is my husband, turns to me and says, "You felt him too, didn't you?"
And you didn't even speak. You didn't.
No. And I couldn't stop. Tears were coming down. It was such a powerful moment. It was so when people tell me that God doesn't exist, it's very hard for me to say that he
Right.
doesn't. I've encountered him too many times in my life.
Right.
And 20 minutes later, when they do the test to see what had happened, take a picture of it, the radiologist comes back and his face is radiant. I mean, I've never seen a doctor's face that radiant in my whole life. They don't really express too much.
Usually in the situation that you're in, they may have a little good news and they may have a little bad news. It's never, 100% good news. However,
In my case, it was very, very good news, because he comes and he says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it." And he's so excited. And I'm just sitting there so quietly and peaceful saying, "Come on, give it to me. I already know." And he goes, "It's gone. Everything's gone. Like, there's no scarring in your lungs. This is not scientifically possible." And I'm like, "But it is possible for God.
mhm,
Everything is possible for God. For you guys, it may have been an impossible situation,
right.
but for God, there's nothing that's impossible." And that's the turning point. And it just wakes me up from this old life, this old identity of being an achiever and a perfectionist, like I had grown up to be, because I grew up with a perfectionist father, who I adore, by the way. But yeah, he didn't know any better. He was operating from his own subconscious mind and his own limited beliefs. And we all know that people aren't that aware unless we do the personal growth work that you and I do, Dan. So,
Right.
So from that perspective, I wake up and I start this quest and I realize, why did I survive when so many others have died just from one pulmonary embolism? I had multiple, and that massive one, and so now I start to reflect, and I get very passionate about personal growth. I start taking masterminds from the John Maxwell team, and then I end up marrying this guy, and I take you on this journey in the book. All of this is I'm taking you on this journey of how I came to become this person that I am today from this other life that was not me. That wasn't who I was born to be. That's not my true soul and my light. My light is to be a speaker, to be an author, to share these stories of empowerment so that other people can realize that life isn't about achieving. It's about the joy in the journey. It's about the love in your life, because at the end of it, you're not gonna be able to take any of these achievements with you. As much as you achieve, yeah, that's great. But did you live? Did you enjoy? Because that's what God is about the rejoicing part of it.
What's interesting is that I had a same and similar experience when I was lying in the hospital room, and my blood pressure was 230 over 120 or something like that. They found out that my triglycerides were 1,227. I got the blood work to prove that one. And the cardiologist saying to me afterwards that he hasn't seen many live beyond with those types of numbers. But I will tell you, I was alone with people because I was in my office, families in North Carolina, and you have those divine interventions. And I started praying also, because you don't know what you don't know at that point. And there's that heaven and hell. I'm assuming you were brought up Catholic, being Mexican, right?
Yes, I was born and raised Catholic. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Italian American, Sicilian American. Same here.
With your last name, I was like, I have a feeling he's gonna be Catholic too. So
yeah. So
right up the alley.
yeah, you have these divine interventions, and when you come out on the other side, you realize that, because my father the same way, he wasn't a surgeon. He was a regular guy. He was a perfectionist. Achieve, success, because the streets were lined with gold in America, because they came from
nothing.
I mean, the way that these people, listen, for everybody listening, you hear these stories all the time, and they're true. You come with nothing in your pocket. You come with the t-shirt that you have on, the torn up pants. Maybe you have shoes, maybe you don't have shoes, and you're dumped on Ellis Island and you want to come to America. And so, achieving and success equated into money. It was money because they came from abject poverty and growing up in abject poverty because they were trying to make it. They didn't have the skills to be a physician or a surgeon or a banker or anything along those lines. We worked with our hands. And so that's what they did. And they made those honest livings, but they wanted us to achieve. And that's what I was doing, Sylvia, I was achieving. And I had offices in multiple states. And it was before a time where insurances, whatever with that. And, we had a lot of employees, over 100 employees. I mean, we were rocking and rolling. We were serving humankind back then. But these situations really bring it to a point where you need to serve at a higher level. And whatever that means for you. And this is a lesson that I teach my son. He's a hockey player, as you know. And I said to him, if this is what you want to do, then do it. Because in the end, if you don't do it, no matter what anybody says, you're the one that's going to be unhappy with your life. And at some point in time, it's going to come crashing down. And you're going to have lessons in life to do what you were meant to be who you are. And if this is who you're meant to be, and if you don't do it for whatever reason, life has a tendency, God, divine intervention, has a tendency to put lessons before you in order for you to become who you are. And if you don't, you could be pretty miserable in life, I said. So these are lessons that you take in your life. So what was that moment in time then that you said, all right, I have a second chance, right? Let's call it that, right? I have a second chance. What was that moment in time where I'm number one in Pfizer? I'm number one. I'm rocking. I got awards all over my home office. You turn on the TV, it's Sylvia, you're number one, right? People are cheering in the streets. What was that moment in time that you said, I'm leaving this and I need to change my trajectory, my career, my life, mental, physical, emotional, all of that? What was that moment?
It's a painful moment for me because when I moved to Austin, I went directly into medical device sales, because I couldn't get a job with my own company. They wouldn't do a lateral move. And I realized then I was a number to them. I wasn't a person. I was a number and a producer for them. And it was sad because as I was leaving my home in Brownsville, Texas, my life to marry my second husband, the realization was very clear to me that I was going to be living a very different life. And I knew the transition was coming. I just didn't know it was going to be a year later because I was fully exhausted. As much as I enjoyed being in sales, it was an exhausting life. And it was after I lost my baby. I had a miscarriage, and I detail this in the book. And I just kind of said, I'm done. I'm done with sales. I'm going to take a break, and I transitioned into the stay-at-home parent. And it was a tough transition because and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because some people are going to say, oh, that must have been so easy for you to just go from this high level to then be a stay-at-home parent and then turn around and become an entrepreneur. And those transitions are tough for anybody, especially people that are used to, that are still not aware of how limiting beliefs drive your actions and results in life. And it really, after I lost my baby, I just thought, I'm going to go on this quest to rediscover what my light is and what God intends for me to learn during this time. And it was learning patience in His timing. That was the greatest lesson I learned during that transitional period. It was a tough time for me because I finally got pregnant with my second child, Vivian. I was 40 years old, so that was an adventure in itself. And
I understand. I was 46 when James was born.
I was like, wow, okay, I'm gonna be wearing tennis shoes for the rest of my life, right? And then one morning, as I'm sitting there with my baby off to the side, I was journaling. I do a lot of journaling. Obviously, I'm an author, so I'm used to writing. And I get this prompting from God that was very pronounced, said, call Bridget, call Bridget. And Bridget McAdams had been my John Maxwell mastermind guide or whatever back in 2011, 2010 sometime. And it was, you got to call her because you're going to be part of the John Maxwell team. And that it was just strong. It was like this.
It's just right there. It was right there before your face.
God instinct. I call him the God instinct in the book. And it was just so strong. And I picked up the phone and I called her and I thought, well, she may not have the same cell phone, but I'm going to try. And she picked up on the first ring and she goes, of course, I remember you. I recommended you to the John Maxwell team. And I started the process there. And that's where I started. But by the time I lost my baby to the time that actually happened, there was like 3 years in between.
Mm-hmm.
And those 3 years is where that lesson in patience
Mm-hmm.
was critical, because as we journey through this life, I've got to later years to realize that it's not on my timing.
Mhm.
I'm part of a master plan, a big, big, bodacious master plan that he's got for me, and he wants the best for me.
Mhm.
And until I saw myself the way that God saw me, I wasn't going to step fully in there like I have now.
Mhm.
After the book was written and I saw myself through his eyes, there was no turning back.
Mhm.
I thought, this is it. And now I'm starting to get out there more and more through these interviews and talk about these stories, because the more people understand that when you're going through all these changes, you're never alone. He's always with you and he's always right next to you. But we are so caught up in finding the answers outside of us through these achievements and influencers for the followers and this and that. All of that is noise. Is when you step into that silence with him,
Mhm.
that you see where you're meant to go. A lot of my chapters, there were times I didn't know what he wanted me to speak about, and I would have these walks in nature and I would get very silent and the ideas would come.
Mhm.
So in answer, like, to the original question of when did I know, it was a series of moments that really clicked it. The more I stepped into uncertainty, the more the path got revealed to me.
So for all of our listeners today, um, what Sylvia is saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because this has happened in my life. Life is not a Hollywood movie where there's a one incident, and it can be one incident. I'm not saying that it can't,
Mhm.
but for you and I, and for most people, it's a process
Mhm.
where there's a wake up call, and then you become a little bit more awake, and now things are happening you may not understand, and you may have to figure that out. And I think as time goes on, the more aware you become, and the more aware you're of what's going on, I think that the more you do that, the quicker the process could be. But
Mhm.
sometimes it does take years
Mhm.
on end in order for you to figure that out, because you're used to a certain way, right? You're used to a certain way, and now it's changing. You're going through that metamorphosis, just like the Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
Startling metamorphosis. Remember that from the 70s?
Yes. And he was my favorite character, by the way. Of all those characters, Incredible Hulk was my favorite.
He's my favorite character too. So when my son was younger, my two favorite characters were Hulk and Thor. And so when those movies started to come out, the Marvel and all of those things, and they had Iron Man, he said to me, "Dad, who's your favorite one?" And I said, "Hulk and Thor." He goes, "You got to choose one." And I looked at him and I said, "Hulk Thor is my favorite one." And he started laughing. So Hulk and Thor are his favorite too right now. So it took a series of events to figure out what this was going on in your life. Take us from there now. Now you're figuring it out. Where do you go from there?
Then the pandemic hits,
Mhm.
in March of 2020, and the prompting got, I mean, strong. Write your book, it's time, trust me. Write your book, it's time, trust me. Well, at this point, my relationship with God had moved from just a friendship to a full union trust. So whenever he prompts, I act.
Mhm.
The questions asked.
Mhm.
Right. So I had this gift that somebody had given me about the best story ever told. It's like a journal that the John Maxwell team gives their people, and it's blank pages. You
Mhm.
open up the book and it's blank pages because you're meant to write your own story.
Mhm.
So I use that to start the
Powerful
journey.
tool. Powerful tool.
Just start putting all these stories. And at first I didn't know what he wanted me to write about. And then he started sending me messengers, people, ordinary people that had asked me throughout the years, how did you get? I want what you have, Sylvia. I want that life that you created for yourself. How did you do that? And that question, how did you do that, kept like swirling around in my head. And I thought, he's guiding me. He's guiding me through these people. So how did I do that? So I started to reflect back on my life experiences. And I go from the age of 7, when that trauma occurs, to explain the coaching process all the way to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I start writing, and then it just starts to reveal itself over. I mean, like seriously reveal itself. And it just starts taking shape.
Mhm.
And by the time I turned around, I had already a writing coach that was working with me. I had a lady in Guatemala who's now translating the book into Spanish currently.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is now coming into the light of day, right? And I share in the book not just coaching tips and traps, and as anybody who's read chapter 1 is available on Amazon to be read, like the full chapter. You see the whole outline of how I do things. But towards the end, I was like, wow, like seriously, like the more I stepped into fully knowing and surrendering to him, the more I just acted. So
Mm-hmm.
when people now ask me, how do you, from what place are you operating from? I'm always wanting to live in the present moment. This is where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
That I look to see what God is sending me, and I look inward for my answers. And I stopped looking outside of myself. Yeah, there are days I'm going to fall off the wagon because I'm human, and I make mistakes. But the more aware I've become, the more I've seen myself the way that God sees me, the more I understood what self-love means. It's coming from where we came from. That term is like, what is that? That's like arrogant and selfish, and that's the way they interpret love. Now I create win-win situations. I have good people surrounding me. When people show me who they truly are, I don't waste time.
Right.
I don't waste time anymore, because I'm just enjoying my life now in the moment. And I'm in a different stage in my relationship with him. That's what really was the key for me. When I was navigating through all that change, and I'm going through a major storm right now in my life that I can't really talk about, but I'm turning to him more, and I don't feel as much pain and sadness as I once did. I don't look to my past anymore. The only reason why I'll look back there is for the lessons I learned.
Right. You can't look back there for the pain, because reliving the pain, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing productive. There's nothing that's going to happen that's going to be beneficial for you. You have these lessons, you've overcome them. And as a friend of mine who's a personal coach, I have 2 friends, they always say to me, you know how to overcome. You use the experience to know how to overcome. You've been there, because then your brain says to you, but I've done this before. This is all you got. This is what you're given to me, life. I got this one. It becomes a little pebble instead of that mountain, as that's
huge mountain that you're just like, it looms over you. And that's what pain represents to a lot of people. And it's funny that we are talking about this right now, because my post today will be about not looking towards your past. I don't know if you ever listened to Mercy Me, the
yes.
group. Okay. Their song Whiplash. Look up the lyrics.
Right.
The Whiplash. And it's like, why are you looking to your past? Let it go, be free, and then just dance. And it's a picture of my father and I dancing, because at the end in chapter 15, I reveal how self-love and seeing myself that the way that God sees me, how it released me.
Mm-hmm.
That anger and resentment that held me captive for so long inside my heart and my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and how it projected onto others. Once that lifted, even the colors outside looked more vibrant to me.
Right.
And the memories that had long been hidden under all that anger and resentment surfaced. Beautiful memories too,
Mm-hmm.
that my mind had forgotten, or it's not that it ever forgot. It was just that anger and
Understand.
resentment were on top of it.
Right. Sure. I
So
totally
treasure.
understand. Totally understand. So, I always take notes when I'm doing a podcast, and here are just some thoughts. Prove your worth, perfectionist, achieve success, exhaustion, number one, journey of life, journey of me, stress, personal growth, tragedy to triumph, faith, trust in the wisdom of change, which is part of your book, lessons in patience and silence and awareness. And I think that this is incredible story that you have. And we're about 40 minutes. We got about another 5 minutes right now. So, I want to have you back on, as I said before, because I think that this is going to be, important lessons in life to help those out, because I do, I'm kind of like my dad in that way. It's like, with my son, everything's a lesson.
Oh,
Sometimes he hates it, Sylvia, and sometimes he loves it.
yeah.
Sometimes he goes, Dad, could you just shut up for a little bit? But
That
I
reminds
said,
me of me and my boy, my 16-year-old.
so I said to him, buddy, no, because if my father, your grandfather was alive, you'd get double indemnity with this one. So, because the book is Journey of Me, trust the wisdom, journey to me, trust the wisdom of change. I'm going to start reading this tonight. I just got my signed copy. I got a signed copy. So I'm going to start reading this tonight. It was supposed to come Sunday and I was going to start it, but I got a notification that it was being held up, and I got it last night at 7:30, believe it or not.
Hey, you know what? You got it. So that's all
I
right.
have it. So this is a book that I want all of my listeners to get. Okay, we're going to go over where you can get that before we sign off today. But a couple of more questions right now. If you were to leave our listening audience today with 3 pearls for personal growth, what would you say to them? And talk a little bit about each one.
The first one being, turning points are life-changing. They truly are. And it's a matter of perspective and focus. You can take that change, and it depends on where you're at in your life. You can make the choice. You can make the choice to move in a different direction. The second point I would say is, when you undergo major change in your life, you're never alone. He's always with you. God is always with you. And when you turn to him, he will guide you to your light, to where you're meant to go, because you were created with an enormous amount of genius and capacity. And life, your life, has had experiences in it that has jaded that you. So and the third pearl I'm going to leave them with is, undeniably, you are a beautiful soul. Be that best version of you, because when you are, those around you, and if you have children, like Dan and I have, boys, and I have a little girl as well, when you model being the best version of yourself, you give them the best chance at being happy, well-adjusted adults. Because we're not raising children, guys. We are raising happy, well-adjusted adults. So remember that. Always remember that. And the best is inside of you.
Right. Yeah, this is an important lesson. And they model our behavior.
Mhm.
And it's very important that we're well adjusted, because if we're not well adjusted, as much as we can be the best version of yourself every single day, they model after you. And this information is applicable in any aspect of your life, right? So if the journey to me, if you want to be a surgeon, if you want to be a chiropractor, nutritionist, personal growth coach, be who you're supposed to be, because that's when you're going to live your best life ever. And if you don't, like we've been saying, life has a tendency, God has a tendency to throw those curveballs at you. And if you don't know how to hit a curveball, you're going to learn very quick how to hit that curveball. And curveballs can be very difficult to hit, especially when you're first up to bat at the first time, when you're just learning how to hit, so, this is important and vital information. So Sylvia, Journey to Me, Trust the Wisdom of Change. Where can we purchase this book?
You can purchase it online on Barnes and Noble and Amazon, but it's all online currently. And there's 3 versions of the book. He's got the paperback version, but there's a hardcover and there is an ebook. And it's available in all formats. And pretty soon this book will be translated into Spanish and will be available for our Spanish readers. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Yeah, I want everybody to get this book. I cannot wait to delve into this book. I cannot wait to get moving with this book. This is going to be something that I'm looking forward to reading. So Sylvia, thank you very much. I would like for us to continue this conversation if you're amenable to it, because I think that we've just scratched the surface of what we're going to talk about. And I think in about a month, we're going to have you back on. This is going out today. I'm not going to wait. I think that's just how important this is. I'm going to send you a copy. You can send it. You can put it wherever you want. You could draw little mustaches on me if you want, if that's, and because I think that this is an important conversation. So thank you very much for being on. Let's discuss a little bit, another podcast when we're done here. The book, Journey to Me, Trust the Wisdom of Change, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Just put in Sylvia Worsham and you'll be able to find it. You go to her website, you'll see more about her, and that'll be in the show notes in addition to. So thank you very much, Sylvia, for being on today and motivating and educating and inspiring. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Everybody who's listening, as we said, we like to create positive change, and this is a positive change. So get the book, look for our next podcast where Sylvia and I have. So thank you very much for listening. Live your best life, and we'll talk soon. Take care.